Before we get started, I just want to thank you all for coming, and an extra special thanks to all of you who've been here since this morning for all three of our panels. And our last panel, certainly not least right now, is entitled Practical Projects, DMZ, and Public Health. And we have two presenters who are going to go over the presentation, as well as we have two discussants. Well, we have three presenters for two papers, as well as two discussants. And as a disclaimer, for the first two, as we saw for the first two panels, you have the booklets in front of you, which have copies of the papers. Please, in the case of Dr. Kim's paper, this hasn't been published yet, so I would ask you to hold off on citing it until it is published, which is will be actually in the next couple of weeks, the next few weeks. But for Dr. Ramon Pacheco Pardo's and Dr. Key Park's paper, that it was actually published this morning. So feel free to take a look at that, in your book and in the book, and publish and cite it in whatever it is you're looking to use it for. And feel free to also check out the great stories about it in the Wall Street Journal and 38 North that came out in the past 24 hours. So let me introduce our speakers in the order in which they'll be talking. Let me first start with Dr. Kim Young-hoon. Dr. Kim is an associate professor in the Department of Hospitality and Tourism Management at the University of North Texas, and his primary research focuses on community engagement and for attractions and destinations. He has actually recently received an award from the University of North Texas Foundation Community Engagement Award, which recognizes a faculty member each year marked by sustained activities that systematically and effectively advance mutual university community engagement. So congratulations on that. Followed by our second speaker, Dr. Key Park, and I've had the very good fortune of introducing a lot of accomplished people on stage, but this is the first time I'm introducing a doctor that would have to raise his hand when someone says, "Is there a doctor in the house?" So I'm thrilled that you're here with us, and he is a faculty member at the program in Global Surgery and Social Change at the Harvard Medical School. And his North Korea-related academic interests include anything related to the unique features of the North Korean public health system, how geopolitical factors influence human security and humanitarian aid on the Korean Peninsula, as well as the complex relationships between international security, health, and human rights. So also presenting with Dr. Park is Dr. Ramon Pacheco Pardo. He's the Korea Foundation Vrije University of Brussels Korea Chair, and a reader, which is another term for associate professor in the international relations at King's College London. He has a new book coming out, which we'll have to keep our eyes out for. North Korea, book's called North Korea U.S. Relations under Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung, which will be published later this year. Something that's not here listed on his bio is that he is a former KEI contributor, writing on South Korea's role in regional financial governance, which is a very different topic, but one he aptly covers in a book that we actually have available on the table outside. And then our discussants for today, for the Dr. Kim's paper, we have Dr. Seung-ho. Dr. Lee is the president of the DMZ Forum, which he helped co-found in 1997, which looks to promote the goal of Korean DMZ conservation. And finally, our last discussant is Dr. David Hong. The second person, I will say he's a medical doctor, is a pediatric neurosurgeon and clinical assistant professor at Stanford University School of Medicine, and his special interest in global health works specifically in developing pediatric neurosurgery services in North Korea, and he is the first outside pediatric neurosurgeon to work in North Korea at the Children's Hospital there. So I'll turn things over now to Dr. Kim to get started on his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the great introduction. Actually, today is a whole day. It's a heavy-duty presentation. And I'm a little bit nervous because Kaya said it's a little bit different area, but totally different area. I'm kind of nervous today, and we just talk about the medical doctor, and my kids always, "Daddy, which body part is your specialty?" And I said, giggling and make happy. Hello, everyone. My name is Young Kim from University of North Texas, and it's my great honor to present our research paper today. Actually, my research interest area is not a medical doctor, but destination marketing and development, and MICE, Meeting, Incentive, and Convention Event, and Sustainability. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to thank you to the KIEP and KEI for funding this great project and also providing a great opportunity to conduct research. And also I'd like to thank you to all my research team, Jinu, Tekbin, and Tubi. So today I'm going to present research project, a case of city development, an incubator village for the DMZ. And actually, we always call the Demilitarized Zone as a DMZ, but I tried to change the word as a dream and miracle zone. As you can see from the slide picture, it is only 20 and 30 feet. Maybe in Asia, we can say about 10 meter or 20 meter. But why can we go over the line? Well, today I don't have enough time to provide all solid answer to that, but at least I can suggest what and how we can prepare for the future. So today's presentation, I have an introduction and why I want to study this with the research team. And I'm going to talk about the purposes of this study and how we conducted this research and research progress. And I'm going to talk about the methodology, which is combined with the qualitative and quantitative research method. And I'm going to briefly talk about the result and discussion, which is we usually use the statistic and our social science. And I'm going to provide some recommendation for the future study. And maybe I'm going to talk about some limitation, which is going to be benefit actually for future study in the DMZ. So as an introduction to Korea's and South North Korea have been divided for almost 70 years. And of course, they have been trying hard to be together. But as we all know, it is still in progress. Then why? My answer is that we are trying hard, but we are too hurry for conclusion, which is a reunification. After in-depth of the literature review, we found that we need the place we get together. Not a north, not a south. We call DMZ area. So in today's presentation, I would like to see how tourists perceive DMZ Imjinggak as a destination to develop the idea which I'm going to provide, Incubating Village. And also, we'll try to find out from the expert point of view how we can incubate new village for the two Koreas. So the purposes of this study is to propose a model to develop incubator village in the DMZ area, to suggest a practical and concrete measurement to restore the ethnic identity and similarity of the two Koreas. Then we try to understand about the place dimension. And using those dimensions, we try to examine the tourist perspective and engagement. And finally, we can provide some implication and tourist future intention and future study. So when we do the literature review and we look at some kind of dark tourism we call, and some studies show that death, disaster, and conflict and atrocities in tourist forms are becoming a pervasive feature in recent tourism landscape. So people are getting more interested in dark tourism. And also Strange and Kempa have highlighted that dark tourism can provide a significant, unique tourism experience to tourists. And some of the study and show the importance of dark tourism. And also, some of the study highlight the value of DMZ as one of the most important tourism resource. Not just interesting, but political and a lot of reason, what we're gonna discuss today. And some scholars propose the initiative of the DMZ Culture Center and the DMZ Peace Park. It has been 10, 20 years we talk about the park. But when we talk about the park, is showcase, which is not actually the people live together. I know maybe this study approach is an imagination, but if we can make it happen, that is time to we can be close together. So what I look at first is I look at some kind of place, dimension, and theory first, because those information and literature can guide us what we can provide the tourist. Also at the same time, what we can as a definition of the place. So the sense of the place can be explained as an individual ability to develop the feeling of attachment to a particular setting based on the combination of use, attentiveness, and emotion. And also place attachments relate to the emotional bond and relationship. And based on that one, we try to look at their engagement. When tourists, when they attend or they visit the site, and they're gonna have a more insight, and they're gonna learn, and they're gonna experience. And what I learned from the DMZ visit and as a tourist, not a scholar, and always they have a great museum and they have some great the rest area, and they have a great monument, but it was just kind of showcase and display. And there is no such a people to explain to the tourist. So what I want to do from this research, I want to find out how we can make them engaged. And actually, we don't have an incubator village right now. So we use the Imjinga and DMZ as a case. And we're going to provide and we're going to suggest some good idea for the incubator village. So what kind of method we use for this research is kind of mixed and combined research together. So for qualitative research, we have an in-depth interview and phenomenological methodology, and also we use the four groups for the interview, qualitative data. We have a government officer, an expert, and resident, and refugees. And we have a 5 participants per group. For quantitative data, we have a tourist, domestic and international, and we have used a questionnaire survey, and we use a systematic sampling method. And we collect the data, Imjinga and train station, Dorasan station. So how we data collection and analysis. Data was collected from the February and to April 2019 this year, and we collect about 291 survey. All the items include the survey instrument 1 to 7, and we use the descriptive data and also advanced data to understand tourist behavior. So quantitative approach. This is a research model, and we look at, as I said, the place is important for the tourist, how they perceive and how they believe. So we look at the 3 dimension is a place as an identity and attachment and dependence. And those things have we want to see impact on engagement, which is kind of interaction on the site as a tourist. And also is impact the revisit intention, and most of time tourism study, we try to look at it. And that is kind of, we can understand tourist perspective, how they believe and how they perceive the Imjinga and DMZ as a tourist destination at the same time, and possibility, potential for the incubator village. So this is a kind of summary of the demographic data. And as you can see, and gender and the marital status and country is kind of half and half, and make sure we got the not just only from the domestic data, but some of them is from the international. So we have a good balance in the data collection. And as we can see here in the the consumer behavior data and place identity and place dependence, and they have some higher than the score is data score higher than a place attachment. And from here, what we can see, this is just kind of frequency, but the mean score is both place and identity and dependence is higher than place attachment, because the tourists believe the Imjingang and DMZ is a good place. Okay, that is a very historical place, but we're not ready to see that is a place to live. And you can see if you drive from the Seoul or Incheon Airport as a tourist, the Imjingang and DMZ is a good tourist attraction, but it's not a good place to stay 1 or 2 nights. And some of the tourists is so scared about the going there and to see the other side, and they keep asking. I said, "Well, that's over the wall. It's not actually North Korea, but they're still kind of scared." So it's about the security. It's one of the issue, and we found out. And of course, no matter what, after they have a first or second experience, and they have a high revisit intention to revisit the DMZ Imjingang, which is no matter what, they're gonna happy and they kind of satisfy their visit, and they love to come back and to see again, and also they wanna try to give a word of mouth to their friend and the family. And qualitative research, what we look at from here is an expert point of view. And we ask them what is going to happen if we provide an incubator village, and what is going to be benefit, what is the strengths and weakness, what is the difficulty. And that was we categorized with 8 questions. So we have about 20 interview questions, and one group was a governmental officer, and one group expert, and most of them is a professor, and resident, and refugees. And result of quantitative data analysis, we can see that place identity and place dependence have a significant impact on engagement. However, we cannot see the significant impact. It was not statistically significant from the place attachment to the engagement. Of course, we found a good engagement. High engagement is a high revisit intention. So result qualitative data analysis, and we can see, and some of them is a lot of information I want to just summarize. And the first question, how can inter-Korean cooperation project contribute to the reunification of the Korean Peninsula in a large framework? And actually, the sub-theme is harmony and mutual understanding, and integration and interaction, which is always I'm looking for, and that is actually my major reason why I'm doing the hospitality and tourism, and especially in the meeting. If people is meeting together, interaction, then make some kind of environment, you can share it, and you can interact, and you can share even not just knowledge and emotion. And there was a kind of very positive response from the expert. And the other one is actually, I want to quote here, some difficulty. Because one respondent said, the other is that I wonder if such things will really happen. It's very negative, because maybe not South Korea. It's not just maybe North Korea. Maybe some stakeholders doesn't like it. So that is one of the comment. It's a strong negative comment. It really happened. And actually, I didn't answer because I was an interviewer, but I said it's maybe happen, because always a dream come true from the imagination. And also they have some, what is the most important thing for success when we build the inter-Korean community village, and they said it's about the political and military tension, and they talk about the separation between cooperation and military issue, and about the trust building. And I think we talk about in the morning about the trust and trust building too. And one of the questions was, what would be the most appropriate place to build the inter-Korean community village and why? And the answer was, the main was Paju, and the other one was Gosong, and the other one is some other place. But Gosong area is kind of good place because historical memory, because Gosong-gun is a separate 50% of the land is belong to the North Korea, and 50% is belong to the South Korea. And also Paju is one of the top destination for the Incubating Village because great access from the Incheon and Seoul. And also Cheolwon is one of the easiest access for the transportation. So that is the top 3 area by expert and suggest as a good location for the Incubating Village. So as we can see, all the results from the quantitative data and show that a place dimension is the impact on the engagement and revisit intention. So I'm gonna just pass by. And last one is the implication recommendation. Actually, when I submit the final draft, the evaluator comment is, could you provide some strong decision making? And I try to explain, this is a great pilot study, but I do not want to provide a strong conclusion or decision making. But I think this is going to be a great start to go on for the next. So first thing is increasing tourist attachment with the security and brand image. So Incubator Village can provide special place and or area for the tourists to increase the social and educational interaction, and tangible historical material like a report or document and data to be experienced by tourists and involved activity by tourists. And also the need for the long-term plan with the strategy instead of the short-term project. And I clearly want to state in the last message, because every time Korean government is to change the strategy and there was no direction. I know it's based on each government and they have a different strategy and mission, but I think if we can have a good place to live together and maybe that place can guide with a long-term goal and step by step. And also studies and public promotion, practical effect of exchange and cooperation project between the 2 Koreas, and clear announcement to the public by collected decision and tangible and successful story from the president, and also ongoing project between 2 Koreas. One of the big topic was discussed by expert is the role of the central government. We not try to make the reunified government, but some kind of tangible government can help this incubating village. And incubating village should provide some physical control tower to examine and evaluate the process, and also centralize the system to consolidate the various cooperation projects between 2 Koreas, and also monitoring system by 2 Koreas and government. Actually, the picture at the back side is as a one step, what I can do, and is the first study abroad program with our student this year, actually 2 weeks ago. I went there, not the Panmunjom, but it's a Tongil Observatory and some area at the border at Imjingak and DMZ. And I think this kind of small step and make sure that our student understand about the situation. And I think that is one of the good steps for reunification and some kind of, we can see some positive outcome for Incubating Village. And finally, I would like to make a note for future studies. And actually, these studies attempt to provide an inclusive review of the current literature by understanding social, economic, and political climate that exists currently in Demilitarized Zone between two Koreas. And I and my research team strongly believe the result of current project will guide the step, how to create Incubating Village in the future. So I kind of propose some kind of year plan as a strategic plan. So maybe next 2 or 3 years, more ideas and data should be collected from the expert, not just political science or public administration, not the tourism, only those 3 areas, maybe safety and risk management and ecology, and maybe civil engineering and geology for city construction, maybe education, maybe medicine, medical doctor, and both government and also public hearing. Maybe as a phase 3, we need to prepare the agreement with the UN and more detailed plan for the Incubating Village, which is next 3-5 years. Maybe contract agreements, terms between two Koreas, and commercial and non-commercial facility, or a resident and the total numbers, resident and ratio, in North and South Korea, so we can count and how many people can live there. And maybe it's a good time for the business investor. The phase 4, I think, is we can do application of the current Incubating Village model into the One Korea. So that is actual kind of project can be implemented a place between South and North Korea. We don't know yet where. We had a good comment, but that is going to be not next year, not tomorrow, maybe at least 5-7 years later. And maybe phase 5 is a kind of evaluation next 7 and 10 years. And we can see it really work or not. Thank you for listening to the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. We'll now turn things over to Dr. Park and Dr. Pacheco Pardo. Do you have a PowerPoint or?
Oh, so it should be up there. Yes. Great. Good afternoon. First, I want to acknowledge KF for funding our research and members of our research team. Besides Max, besides Ramon, there was Eliana Kim and Max Ernst. They worked hard at this project. Thank you, Ambassador Stevens and KEI, for hosting us here today. So I'll be briefly talking about the public health aspect of our report and then turn it over to Ramon for the political aspect of it, which is really the reason why we're here. So why do we do this study? I don't want this study to get bogged down into the specifics of injury care, right? That's not really why we did this study. We wanted to highlight the response of the DPRK Ministry of Public Health in dealing with their injury care deficit and how that would be possible in the context of current sanctions and the political pressures that are applied internationally. As they say in public health, all public health is political. And in this case, this is more truer than ever. So how do we do this study? We chose to choose injuries as an entry point for discussion on the need for surgical care in North Korea. I'm a surgeon by training, doctor. And I've been to North Korea 20 times, and I've operated there. So we looked at the injury burden, and then we wanted to see what would happen to this burden in 3 sectors, right? One is tourism, one is infrastructure, construction, and third is road traffic. And we wanted to see what the trends were. And we also did a macroeconomic analysis and what is costing North Korean economy as a result of this current burden. So, and we also applied a sort of a hypothetical, what would happen in case North Korea opens up, like it did like Myanmar did, right? And what happened to their injury burden in a matter of short 2-3 years. So quickly, we're going to go through the actual information. Let's see. I don't expect you to look at these slides. I'll go over it with you. It's quite simple. So if you look at the under 5, children under 5, the number one killer is infectious diseases. We all know this, right? Diarrhea and pneumonia. But once you pass that 5-year threshold, the number one reason for North Korean people from ages 5 to 29 dying is due to injuries. And a lot of people don't know that. And that trend has been increasing over the last 15 years, and we expect it to go even higher. We looked at the macroeconomic losses, looking at the disability-adjusted life years as a result of all the deaths that we expect from this injury burden and the disabilities. And we calculated up to $1.5 billion in losses to the North Korean economy as a result of current injury burden. And then we applied the Myanmar model. We can expect additional 50% increase. So we're talking about as much as 2.2 billion in lost economic output in North Korea. Now, we're not saying we can erase all that losses by providing surgical care, but it just gives you an idea of what they're dealing with. And then we used, so let's just step back a little bit. I also work as a consultant at the World Health Organization, and we provide technical assistance to the ministries of health as they try to improve their surgical care from ground up. And North Korea is one of the countries that have stepped up and said, we want to do this. And this happened actually back in 2015. So every year, the World Health Assembly, 194 member states of the World Health Organization come together in Geneva, and they pass resolutions. And there was a resolution in 2015 that was sponsored by Zambia. It was co-sponsored by the U.S., and it specifically called for strengthening emergency essential surgical care as a component of UHC, universal health coverage. North Korea at that time was an outspoken advocate for this resolution. In fact, they represented the entire Southeast Asia region and spoke on behalf of the entire group and said, we absolutely believe this is important. So the resolution actually passed unanimously, and it has certain mandates for each member state to implement back home. And North Korea promptly, in their 5-year medium-term strategic plan, 2016 to 2020, inserted into their strategic item, a priority item as one of the items, in the provision of WHO essential package of surgical services at the frontline hospitals. That's exactly what we were calling for in the resolution, and that's exactly what North Korea did. So the other countries did as well. For instance, Zambia and Tanzania, and they're into their sort of financing and implementation phases. So what does this national level strengthening surgical services look like? We're talking about district level hospitals providing 44 essential package of surgical services in a timely, safe, and affordable manner. That's the ultimate goal of this resolution. Well, in Zambia, something like this would cost about $400 million. So our team actually helped the Zambian Ministry of Health with the budgeting. In Tanzania, we're talking around $700 to $800 million. And not having done an assessment inside North Korea, we're just roughly estimating to be about $500 million project. And this is entirely throughout the entire country at the county level hospitals, not in Pyongyang, but at the local level hospitals. Is that project a $500 million project involving the entire country? And most of the expenses, majority of it will be infrastructure and equipment, and there's some training component as well, but more than half of that money will be used to upgrade district level hospitals, operating rooms, and get equipment. So now I want to shift the discussion over to this proposed project. North Korea wants to move on this. So as of this year, for the first time, we heard news from the WHO country office that DPRK, Ministry of Public Health, wants to do something about this because it's been in their plans for now 4 years and they want to do something. The question they have for me, and I was just at the WHO, at the World Health Assembly, just last May at the World Health Assembly, is that, Dr. Park, is this something that's possible? We want to do this, but we're worried about the current sanctions and all the funders that have just sort of gone away at the traditional donors. So that brings me to a point where the conversation now shifts to the politics of public health in North Korea. So I'll switch to Ramon.
So that's the slides that the key was supposed to use. But you can find everything on the report. I won't repeat the thanks that the key has already given. I would only also thank the Korea Foundation because you pay my salary actually, so I can feed my kid, so that's very nice of you. So the last two slides actually, which is the last section that you have in the report, section 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, we focus on the politics of whether this can actually be implemented as of now. So not having to wait, for example, to an improvement in relations between the U.S. and North Korea, removal of sanctions, etc., right? And we start with the payment component, right? Because the first question that you would have if you want to implement this program is who is going to pay for this? And as you know, there would be people who would argue, well, this has to be paid by the North Koreans themselves, right? Because they have a nuclear program, a missile program, so why should we be paying for this? And the case that we make is that we are not talking about the North Korean regime here. We're actually talking about ordinary North Koreans who have no say in the way the government is spending its money, and they have no way of changing the way the government is spending their money. So the DPRK currently actually doesn't have the resources, is not spending money on this particular issue. But if we are going to implement this program, and as Key was mentioning, there is interest from the North Korean side and from members in the international community. So this is something you will see discussed in Europe, for example, in different European countries. We shouldn't just be paying this program with North Korea not contributing, right? And that's why we focus on a co-financing model, which is not new, and we describe it in the report with reference to two particular examples, which are Gavi and the Global Fund, right? Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance that is still operating in North Korea. Before sanctions were increased in 2016-17, North Korea was paying more or less roughly half of the costs of this program. After sanctions started to be implemented, the figure went down to 10-15% of the total amount spent in the program, but North Korea is actually paying towards this program, right? And if you look at the Global Fund, that was closed a few months ago, it might be reopened, but North Korea was also contributing to this program. So the idea here is that there will be a commitment from the North Korean government to provide financing for this program, and this is not the international community financing a program which some people would argue from a moral and ethical point of view shouldn't be happening in the case of North Korea because of the behavior of the regime and the way it decides to spend its money, right? And the second component and last part of the report is, should we be doing this now? Should we be waiting a number of years until North Korea has opened up, relations with North Korea or between the international community and North Korea have actually improved? And the point that we make that even if North Korea doesn't open up, as we show, and some of the slides actually show towards the beginning of the presentation today, this is a need that North Korea has today, because as Key mentioned, people aged between 5 and 29, this is the most likely cause of death. And again, we're talking about ordinary North Koreans here. So the need is actually there as of today. We cannot wait a number of years until sanctions, for example, have been removed, relations have improved, and we can start thinking about financing this program. So the need is actually there. Not only this, from a political point of view, in theory, if you look at the sanctions regime, this is not covered by the sanctions regime. So this is something that you could implement, a program that you could implement without having to wait for any removal of sanctions. And the UN Security Council resolutions are quite clear that humanitarian assistance should be excluded from the regime itself. There is also the question about, well, is the North Korean government going to divert this money? Is it going to use it for other purposes, the missile program, the nuclear program? What is interesting about this, and we conducted a number of interviews with the stakeholders based in Pyongyang or who have offices in Pyongyang, including, for example, European countries that have embassies in Pyongyang and have aid programs across North Korea, but also NGOs that operate in North Korea, is that those that actually operate these aid programs have no real concerns about it. They can monitor how the program is actually being implemented. They can move across the country. so they can actually see where their aid is actually going, right? So this concern that some people seem to have doesn't seem to be based on reality on the ground. Plus, there is also the component that if we implement a program that can go up to $500 million, this would require more human resources that are currently deployed in North Korea. So you could actually improve monitoring mechanisms by actually sending more external experts, advisors, or even monitors that can travel around the country to make sure that the program is being implemented in the way it is. Also, if we're talking about medical equipment, so it's more difficult, for example, to divert medical equipment than food, right? So the black market for medical equipment, for example, which more than food, is that is actually your concern. And there are two other components to this. The fact that the current South Korean government, I'm not going to talk about the U.S. government because you know better than I do, obviously, but in Europe, for example, the conversation is very similar. There's this perception that humanitarian aid has been politicized, or was politicized throughout 2017 and maybe the first half or throughout 2018, and this shouldn't be the case, right? We shouldn't be using humanitarian aid as a leverage to change the behavior of the North Korean regime. Right, so there should be this separation between the humanitarian component of relations with North Korea and the nuclear issue, the missile issue, security issues in general. Plus, even if your concern is not the well-being of North Koreans, which some people might not have this concern and say, well, this is something for the North Korean government to sort out. Well, this is something that could serve as a confidence-building measure and implement sustainable engagement with North Korea. So basically engagement that doesn't depend on the latest nuclear test or missile test or threat of a test, right? So you could implement this program with a view at having people on the ground in North Korea. You are engaging on a regular basis, on a sustainable basis. And again, this is something that is part of the discussion among policymakers. I won't go into the U.S. debate. Maybe we can discuss it later on. But in Europe, it's a very clear point of discussion, right? If you look at the German government, UK government, French government in Brussels, is this something that we can use to actually tell North Korea, well, North Koreans, we have nothing against you, right? We have something against the behavior of your government and the nuclear program that is implemented. But when it comes to dealing with ordinary North Koreans, no problems whatsoever. We're willing to actually help you in any way we can. So this program could actually serve as a confidence building measure. And one very last point, because we're going to have the discussants, that came up from a discussion that we had yesterday, actually, before when we first met the team, is that actually this could actually entice North Korea as well to change its behavior overall, right? Because there's this lack of trust, and this was discussed in one of the papers this morning between North Korea and the international community, between North Korea and the U.S. Well, this is one of the areas that could actually help to bring trust between North Korea and the rest of the world at the top leadership level, but also with the people of North Korea and middle-ranking officials that would actually be involved in implementing this program. So I will leave it there, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Park and Dr. Pacheco Pardo. That was a very comprehensive overview of the topics which you addressed. So I'm going to now turn things over to our discussants. Dr. Lee will start us first talking about Dr. Kim's paper.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for this great presentation. And actually, I just came back from Korea last night, and then came over to here from New York. And I see your audience here is so attentive while I'm so sleepy. You're a great audience. I try to make it very tangible, because as I teach my students, you always keep in mind you have to link your head to toe. Something abstract, something concrete, always keep in mind. So finally, we have here practicality. So I'm glad and hope that you enjoy my presentation and discuss some discussion related to Dr. Kim's paper. Assuming that you don't know anything about Korean DMZ, So I just a brief note. It is created by war, Korean War in 1953. After the 3 fierce war, the war ended with armistice, not formal end. And that makes the buffer zone called Demilitarized Zone. The size is north and south in the middle of the Korean Peninsula is a 2.5 mile, and east and west is about 155 miles. So this year it's been 66 years. So many scientists and many observers kind of painted and described the area as an accidental paradise because recently, as you may see the news, there is a black bear alive in the wild, was captured in the DMZ. And I noticed that also there is evidences of leopards, footprints, and even tigers. And also, any other species, the bird species, that the white-naped cranes and red-crowned cranes, and those endangered species has wintering grounds, more than 30% of the international cranes. So many scientists, have kept focus on these areas. And today, Dr. Kim's paper kind of made a great point where we should go. And actually, we've been talking about this issue since 1997, when I formed the DMZ Forum in New York City and New York University, where I teach. And working with the Korea Society, working with the Asia Society, United Nations, and Korean government and Korean NGOs, we talked a lot about issues related to DMZ, political, economic, cultural, and of course history, and how we can do, or what it can do, something. So for the 10 years from then, like 1997 to 2007, we talked without North Korean view, but I suddenly realized there's nothing we can do without any input from North Korea, because as you know, half of DMZ is occupied by North Korea. So since 2007, I was working with North Korea. So that's why the DMZ Forum has been sort of silenced, because my friend Scott Snyder told me this afternoon, where's the DMZ Forum? So I told him. So tourism seems to be the key. I was so fascinated by his presentation, because I also was fascinated by the DMZ 22 years ago by its dream and miracle zone that he put as a subtitle. Yeah, it's really a dream and it's a miracle in terms of nature regenerated by itself out of total destruction. So nobody can deny its miracle side of the region. But there's also dark tourism that Dr. Kim mentioned, that people see it as a challenge, as a danger. And of course there's danger because, as you may know, the area is scattered with 2 million landmines. Nobody knows where the landmines are because the landmines map is disappeared. And of course the landmines, there's moving around like a plastic landmines. So many of the civilians in South Korea still, have trouble with those landmines, their legs and foot and so on. So in terms of research, as you may imagine, it is very difficult because I'm great that Dr. Kim did such a great research under the circumstance of DMZ situation. So direct scientific observation is almost impossible because you cannot get in. Even you can get in with the help of military, it's only a few days with designated route, military route inside of DMZ. So many scientific data is speculation and based on the research on the outside of the DMZ, we so-called the civilian control area. So that is a certain limitation in terms of any research. And also, interesting is there have been no comparable areas in other parts of the world. This DMZ situation is sort of unique in terms of ideological kind of confrontation and one nation divided, but there are no nation divided on Earth now. So that's the problem in terms of research design. Also, problem is that many of the study results are based on assumptions. This morning we talked a lot about assumptions and beliefs, So that's why I think this kind of research is important, because to know what we don't know is very first step to know more. So I think this research is help what it can do in the future of for DMZ, for peace and prosperity in the Korean Peninsula. Why we're here today? I hope that out of this session and whole day of learning, I hope that we can find some clues what we can do on the ground to move toward peace and prosperity. And I guess this DMZ tourism is the key in regard to that idea. For the last 10 years, I told you that I was working with North Korean side. I learned that 100% the DMZ is their protective wall. They don't want to talk about it at all. They don't want any influence from South Korea. It was 10 years ago. But now I begin to change, like 70, 80% of that concept. They want a little bit of tourism. How can get access to them? Two sides. One is their official side based on our offer to the tree planting. We help them reforest their hills and mountains. So we bring tree saplings, thousands of them. It costs a lot. And then we brought experts and government officials from Pyongyang to China. And we surprisingly noticed that they brought their data, their geographical data. So they do have their data, but it's a matter of accessibility. So they did present PowerPoint presentation. This is not that nice that the person who did this morning, but it's very, amazing. They did such an effort to impress us to help their hills and mountains more. So through that interactions, I noticed that they are very interested in their nature conservation, biodiversity, and also mountains near the DMZ. That is my primary interest. So I gradually talks about Kangang Mountain need to be kind of preserved for ecotourism, for more openness, and it can be linked to Seung-ho Mountain in South Korea through the DMZ. So it's naturally linked both mountains, like a sister mountains. So I, pondered that idea. So I didn't get any response at the time. And another route is more scholarly route, which is more scientific exchange program. So some agricultural skills, or some how to replant, how to grow nursery plants and things like that. So that is more university-based exchange program. But through that, I was able to interview and talk with government officials and scientists and experts. So I think I can help Dr. Kim, his research, to include those samples from North Korean side, because his research did not include any samples from North Korean side, because DMZ, we cannot talk about anything without North Korean views. And of course, the tourism aspects, North Korean residents cannot travel on their own behalf. So it is hard to kind of interview them to get their own opinions about what to do. So that's still some kind of limitation I noticed here. So far, his research is giving us more tangible dream that can be accomplished. So I hope that I can suggest two projects. Two projects that I just discussed last week when I was in Korea with the government officials and with some kind of consent with our opposition, because through our 22 years of talks and conversation with Korean DMZ, I vividly remembered Dr. Edward Wilson at Harvard said that Korean DMZs is Gettysburg and Yosemite rolling together. That's his own word. So I remember that. This is a great word. There's the greatest potential for tourism, unestimable kind of budget that we can get out of it. And then, miraculously, recently in the DMZ, really in the middle of the DMZ, there is a called Arrowhead Hill. Maybe you heard about that. That hill, unfortunately, sadly, remains of soldiers discovered. Many. We don't know where the soldiers come from, but some French, English, and North and South Korean, of course, and some Chinese, of course. As we see the record, 10 days of battles, like thousands of soldiers died to, capture the hills, day and night. So I thought that this area should be preserved as a memorial park, like a Gettysburg. And the Gettysburg spirit is we memorialized the soldiers regardless of friends and foe. So this is the subject I want to pursue within the DMZ. We should establish a memorial park, just like Gettysburg, Edward Wilson said. And at the same time, as I told you, Mountain Kumgang, Mountain Sorak can be combined as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, natural asset. So actually, I talked about it with the UNESCO for the last 10 years, and they kind of say there's no reason why we cannot accept if both North and South Korean government apply for the nomination of Mountain Kumgang and Mountain Sorak together as a World Heritage Site. So with that, I hope that you could think about these two projects, something tangible, something we can do with the help of many governments, because south side of DMZ is controlled by UNC, but is kind of controlled by U.S. Army. So we need help from U.S. government and South Korean military and North Korean government. So in this way, I think tourism will kind of give us some melting spot out of this icy situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for that important context, as well as some ideas about potential places for tourism along the DMZ. I'll now turn things over to Dr. Hoon, who will talk about Dr. Park's and Dr. Pacheco Pardo's paper.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. It was a very enlightening and interesting day for me in hearing about a lot of different aspects I'm not directly involved in most commonly. In the spirit of maybe unnecessarily full disclosure, I actually ignored the initial email as an invitation to come because I saw the words invited to review, and oftentimes that's medical journals that are spamming you to review their papers, and so I didn't pay any attention to it. But then I got another email saying, hey, Dr. Hung, we're wanting to see if you want to take part. And then so I opened the email, and it was from the Korea Economic Institute, and I said, okay, well, definitely this is either spam or they have the wrong person, because David and Hong are both not particularly unique names. But nevertheless, we continue to correspond, and it turns out the person he was trying to speak with was actually the person I thought he was trying to speak with, and so here I am, and I'm very happy to be here. So I'll just talk about myself briefly. So I've been going to North Korea since 2015, and working with the Korean American Medical Association. And so I go and I specifically work at the Ongyu Children's Hospital. And for those of you who don't know, probably most of you, pediatric neurosurgery is essentially all pediatric specialty care. It's kind of a first world entity. And so most often when you go to developing countries, you won't really find pediatric specialists. Some of the things I've gleaned in going to North Korea is that the medical care continues to expand. We've seen that it is actually, they try to apply the socialist principles to the medical care, and so it is essentially universal access. But there is still some level of tiered accessibility to certain hospitals, and some which are unofficially in existence. But as far as the children are concerned, I don't see a major discrepancy because I always try to ask a little bit about the background of where these patients are coming from and how they get there. And we see that it seems to be kind of an equal access facility. Their pediatric hospital is actually kind of the crown jewel in Pyongyang's medical system. It's the most recently built, and so it has a lot of more advanced developments, including like state-of-the-art anesthesia machines and lighting and things like that. And advanced imaging modalities like CT scanners and digital subtraction angiography. They do seem to suffer a bit from sanctions and/or costs because there are some advanced diagnostic things which aren't present, and some advanced hemostatic tools and medications, and so there's always a limited supply of particularly antibiotics and more tailored medications. They do spend a lot of time developing other areas as well, and so there's other specialty hospitals in existence like the Maternal Wellbeing Hospital and OB Hospital. They also try to develop ophthalmological hospitals as well as a plastic surgery center, and are focusing on expanding different aspects of that. Even in the pediatric hospital, they've expanded to include a telemedicine system, and so they're reaching out to the surrounding areas to try to care for the children there. Some of the other adult hospitals, which used to dabble in pediatrics, is funneling it into the pediatric hospital itself. And so in these other specialty hospitals, they still kind of carry the flag of the socialist, universal access, including the infamous double eyelid surgery, which is popular in Asia, and so some of the nurses there have had that done as well. So just as a point of comparison, what the North Koreans have built is called a freestanding children's hospital, what we would in the United States would call that. In the U.S., I think there's roughly around 150 or so freestanding children's hospitals, which is a separate building with all dedicated pediatric providers. Many hospitals will have a pediatric hospital, a quote-unquote pediatric hospital, but it's incorporated into the main hospital and occupies some of the floors itself. But that is a rarity, and even in South Korea, I originally thought there was maybe not even one, but I think there's maybe 3 or so in South Korea itself. In terms of the medical care, I think that prevention seems to be a big component in North Korean medical care. There's the publication which is dedicated to ways to maintain well-being of your health. Some of the research that we have seen in the past at the International Medical Conference focuses on preventative components. But in some of the pathology that I've seen there in the hospitals, we see that it's not really making it out to the regions, and we'll see some babies come to the hospital who are growing with congenital conditions, which would be very easily caught in routine well visits that we do for children in the United States. And so some of these children will go on for years enduring the congenital malformation. Some people may see some of these medical pictures out of other developing countries with children with very large heads and such. And so that is something that we still continue to see in North Korea. In my time there, I've gone a total of 6 times so far. I don't think there is an official emergency room in the children's hospital or even in the medical center, and I think it's the emergency systems are really not in place as far as I can tell. I've never even seen a police car going down the street or sirens or ambulances, and I think it's very few and far between. Most of the time, urgent situations, parents will bring their children in themselves or other family members, and or else they get brought in from the neighboring cities somehow, and so there's a huge need there, and I think that's why this paper is another important reason why this paper is very important. And so I just want to congratulate them for addressing this area in what I think is a very interesting and novel way to try to approach the topic. And as we've been revisiting today over and over, there's some opaqueness to the North Korean information, and some of their research can be unreliable. And so I think some of the highlights of the paper are the focus on tourism and international development and economic development. And we see evidence of this in our visits and visible change, including some basic things like the airport, which was formerly just one large room for both arrivals and departures, is now just a full-fledged airport with multiple gates and such. We've seen foreigners are now able to get currency at the real rate rather than this mocked up rate that they use for foreigners. You see more taxis on the road and see more people doing mercantile type business on the side of the streets and just dealing directly in sort of a direct-to-consumer type fashion. And so change is ongoing in the DPRK, and particularly if you look at some of the tourism companies, there's things like the Pyongyang Marathon, and they're advancing skiing and bringing tourists for skiing in the north. And so, these are areas that are very prone to injuries. And if you can imagine, I went to Pyongyang to do a marathon, and then I came back with a broken and deformed leg. I think that would really shut down the interest in going to North Korea very rapidly. And so, those are two big international draws for people coming to North Korea. And I think addressing this issue is going to be of great service to them. So, there's a lot of opportunity here for international collaboration, and in the U.S. to be involved and address a lot of the themes that we talked about today with the mistrust and the transforming relationships, as well as the accountability, since there would be a very large number of medical professionals being required to come into the country on a regular basis, and heading out to the peripheries and into the countryside where there's less information known, and a lot of room for improvement. And so I think there's a lot of benefits highlighted by this paper, including that the medical machinery and other humanitarian aspects of providing support in that area is not really transferable. I don't think being concerned about it converted into some sort of military aspect is a real priority, is a real concern. And overall, I think establishing lines of trust in committing to this project from the U.S. point of view in terms of humanitarian development is extremely worthwhile and valuable in the long-term setting. So, very great paper.
Thank you, Dr. Hung, for those comments. I'll give each of our presenters, there's been a lot of interesting points made by each of the discussants. If you want to take a few minutes to address some of those points, I'll give you some time to do that now. I'll turn over to Dr. Kim to start us off.
So thank you for the great comment and positive comment for this Incubating Village. Sorry. And actually, from the study, I kind of found, our research team found that a lot of limitation for this study because of North Korea involvement, what you mentioned about it, and also great possibility about the sustainability perspective. And also, it's a place and location is very important, actually. We have a lot of stakeholders. Maybe other perspective we can discuss, but I think those are three major kind of limitation of this study. So as I mentioned, for the future study, I think it's a great limitation. The limitation is going to be great potential resource for the future study. So what we can do, well, I don't think it's tomorrow or maybe next year, we can ask the North Korea to be involved in this Incubating Village. But I think somehow we can build a model based on expert point of view, or some kind of the research perspective, and the result can provide some clear direction how we can provide this place. And I think they have a lot of perspective. We can talk about it, but maybe some kind of economic benefit for North Korea, or also some of the benefit, what we talk about, kind of medical perspective, and or some kind of collaboration in North and South Korea can together. And one of the kind of good the comment about the Kumgang and Sarak Mountain, maybe that is kind of initiate or reinitiate our tourism game. And as a second part, it is sustainable perspective. And as a as a faculty member at the UNT, we have a great program. It's a MIST, it's a Master International Sustainable Tourism with Costa Rica. And I found that sustainable tourism has a great impact at these days. Actually, it's for the environment, but at the same time, the policy making and decision. And so those components also is going to be great future study kind of resource or course, and we can explore and more about the sustainable perspective. And I was actually shocked when I visited the new the museum. I don't know what is it called, but I cannot remember. But the Gosong area, they built a new one, and they displayed about some of the the species I never seen in Korea, but they are in the DMZ. And I think that is a great perspective even for our children and those kind of great resources. And also the place location is one of the great study we can do it. It's not just North and South Korea, but it's a great some kind of involvement by third party and stakeholders, because that is a location. It's not an amusement park or theme park, but I think somehow we can create as some kind of, I do not want to talk about the dream, but that is going to be a good place, both in North and South Korean together to live. And also one of my student, doctoral student, Taek Bin, suggest, what about, and also expert, what about the Korean immigrant to the U.S. and who is a resident right now here in the United States? Maybe they are interested in to leave the Incubating Village because they all miss the hometown, the Korea. And if we can provide a village for them, maybe they have a chance. And maybe they have some young generation, because we talk about the economy of Korea. Maybe if we can provide a benefit in the South Korean resident and young generation, maybe they have a possibility with some good support and fundamental support. So those kind of is a great comment from the limitation can provide some good guideline for the future study. So I'm so excited about this study, and also at the same time, and they have a lot of negative perspective because it's not tangible at this point, but I hope we can find some good solution and approach to make this happen.
Doctors Park and Pacheco Pardo.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the comments from Dr. Hong, and there seems to be a common theme about trust, right? That's the first part of the Singapore the agreement, transforming the relationship between the U.S. and DPR Korea. And I've operated in North Korea multiple times, and I'm standing on one side of the table, and the North Korean surgeons standing on the opposite side, and we're literally banging our heads as we operate. But there's this bond that forms as we team up to treat our common enemy, which is the disease or the injury of the patient. We are now one in an effort. And I would like to say that what better way to build trust now between U.S. and DPRK than partnering with North Korea to improve the treatment capacity for the injured. And the best part is, it does not require rollback of the sanctions. It's already built into that. Thank you.
So this has been a fascinating discussion so far, and I hope to carry it over through the audience. So I'll turn it over to you all to see if there are any questions. We'll go here first, but please wait for the mic. I think we're getting it ready in the back. Just hold with us for a couple of seconds here. Sorry. You can put your hand down.
Use my basso.
Well, people on the live stream have to hear you to the mic.
I'm a Peter Humphrey, an intelligence analyst and a former diplomat. I note that there is one other place in the world that is very similar, and that's the 15-mile zone around Chernobyl, which is undergoing much the same natural evolution, except in that case the animals are hot. I'm a little concerned here, and I think that maybe things are being done in the wrong order, and that is, I want your reaction to that. It seems to me the very first thing we want to do is make an agreement with North Koreans to jointly demine the whole zone. And the second thing, as a very goodwill gesture, although not necessarily a confidence building gesture, would be to conduct an exhaustive biological survey with scientists from both sides of the border, and then maybe declare the whole thing a national park. A national park like no other that hasn't been touched for decades. By that vision, you don't want to be building villages in a national park. So I just want to show that as an alternative that may be equally valuable.
Are there any additional questions? If we collect them, that would be nice. Bill?
Yeah, I've been following the North Korean economy for a long time, and I'm really intrigued by changes in the marketplace. But my major confusion comes on wages, how people are paid, the state system or the market system. Because officially, a nurse would be paid 3,500 won per month, which won't buy a cup of coffee in the market for a month. But then she gets a lot of perks, rations. I'm wondering, though, for people, doctors who, working in North Korea, do you have an idea, a good sense of how the staff are paid, the doctors and the nurses? When you work with them, when you give aid, can you pay the workers dollars or won at 8,001 per dollar? Do they get real money from it, in other words, or are they pretty much fixed in place in the socialist system where they're paid by ration? Can any of y'all give me any insight on that?
Oh, sorry, we'll take one more question from Florence, then we'll turn things over.
If you are to build eco park in DMZ area, confidence building is important, but I would think from the North Korean side, it's an economic benefit to them. So have you done any sort of economic analysis of how you split the eco park project? And this is also my personal curiosity to Dr. Park. Why injury? I know you are trained by surgeon, but there's cancer or there something seems to be more urgent than injury case. So just curiosity from personal point of view.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I've actually had a couple of conversations specifically on that subject, and we don't have a lot of access to the people directly, and unfortunately, the only person I could really ask was the guide, and I just I asked them. There's clearly a discrepancy in, if it's a socialist system, that everyone should theoretically have equal belongings and things like that. But clearly, there's discrepancy and there's different levels. And I asked her, how is that possible in the DPRK? And she didn't really answer the question, but said there's some level of kind of like she pointed to somebody selling fruit on the side of the street one day. And so there is, I guess, some level of small level of entrepreneurship going on. And at least particularly, we don't really deal with currency with anyone at the hospital. But when we're traveling by cabs and such in the general transport, though, they accept renminbi and dollars both, as well as regular won. And so there seems to be currency floating and in use throughout. And so even some of the stores will accept some dollars every now and then. But it's kind of. Yeah, that's kind of the best the closest I've come to it, and so.
I guess my point is that's such an important thing if you think about it.
Yeah.
How the system rewards.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that should be one of the first questions.
Yeah, it seems highly protected, so I empathize.
I'll respond to the last question. Why injuries? So the North Korean Ministry of Public Health, their proposed project is to strengthen emergency essential surgical care throughout all the county hospitals. It's the provision of those 44 operations, and this includes injuries, which is the largest bucket, by the way, long bone fractures, but includes emergency obstetrics when they need cesarean sections. In fact, there was a large-scale health project that was led by WHO UNICEF from 2005 to 2015, about $60 million project, specifically dealt with maternal and child health at this district-level hospital. But anyway, so there's the injuries, there's the maternal emergency obstetrics, sexual reproductive health, family planning, and then there's the cancers, diagnostic and treatment of cancers. In countries like North Korea, chemotherapeutic agents are extremely expensive, and radiation therapy machines are almost unheard of. So cancer care, and then childhood conditions like congenital malformations, club foot, cleft palate. So if you think about this, now it's a spectrum of surgical conditions, and that's what the North Korean Minister of Public Health is trying to address. We chose injuries, and because it's the urgency, right? Because we want to make sure that people understand this is we can't wait on this problem. People, so it was that it was the largest burden of surgical need, and then also the sense of urgency.
So I mean, the other reason is, and I think you probably mentioned it, right? Because if North Korea is going to open up and attract more tourism, attract more foreign workers, attract more investment from overseas, right? You won't be attracted to the country if an injury can result in death or I think you were talking about the leg, for example. Yeah. Right. So amputation, for example, these type of things, right? So if the country is going to open up and improve its economy, as a foreigner going into the country, you would want to make sure that this is not going to happen to you. So the sense of urgency that was mentioned by Key is also related to this fact, right? And actually, the first paragraph in the report, we actually start with the case of the Chinese tourists who were killed in a bus crash last year. I think it was 50 or 60 of them, and how Kim Jong-un actually went to the hospital, and this was reported, right? And I think he or the regime felt, okay, this is something that we have to take care of if we're actually going to be able to attract people from overseas, not only take care of the North Korean population itself.
Okay, to the questions of this gentleman about demining the DMZ and some biological survey before anything we plan to do. Actually, building villages is very long-term goal that should be considered as a final result, as I talked to Dr. Kim today. And of course, we have to plan very carefully. And my suggested UNESCO World Heritage Site and some memorial park, eco park, also should be planned very carefully with demining goes first, of course, and a biological survey, of course, should do in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. But before that, what I've been doing in the last 10 years is a trust building. Some audience questions about confidence building in some other parts of the area in North Korea. So that's what we did, because they did not want to talk about anything about DMZ because it's their protective wall from South Korean influence, so capitalist influence. So the two projects here, actually one thing is Professor Kim's paper today. In his paper, he mentioned egalitarian farm economy. Actually, in Ambien, North Korea, is just north out of, just below Wonsan and northern DMZ. And we actually help plant, the egalitarian farm economy. We help them to produce more of their, rice products and other farm products. We provided tractors and all the equipment. It was a long time ago, so we can do that. And then one condition is that when you harvest, do not harvest completely. Just leave some for birds. That's only one condition. That's the Crane Foundation we did together. So I like that. Biodiversity is not in conflict with the local economic well-being, as you mentioned. So that is one confidence building measures that we hope it can help build more. Another one is also, of course, tree planting in North Korea we did. So there's something we can ask more to do on Mountain Kumgang in terms of tourism, but allowing more scientific research and survey. That is our own condition. Before doing that, so of course, we've been discussing a lot about conflicts between conservation and development. Sometimes peace is our enemy, to the DMZ forum, because many people try to build an Eiffel Tower in the DMZ, or soccer field, or many other suggestions in the DMZ. But we kind of come down to kind of dividing DMZ into three areas. The eastern part has absolute conservation areas with Mountain Kumgang and Mountain Sorak. And the middle, kind of ecotourism with crane kind of observatory post, along with the Gettysburg-style military park. And the western part is more human interactions, peace park nature, that we could do more, human intervention in the area so that we can manage the DMZ nicely, kind of accommodating people's kind of input.
Actually, I learned a lot of things from your comment. I will just be honest, I don't have any idea about the biological survey or anything, but what I can think is about the sustainability. What I approach for the sustainability is not about animals or species. One of the good example in Korea, and maybe some of you already visit the Korean folk village. And when I look at the Korean folk village as a tourism expert, that is a great kind of opportunity for the tourists to experience, understand about the Korean culture. But on the other side, it's not a sustainable model for Korea and for those who employed and work at the Korean folk village, because the circulation as a good economy has to be kind of turn out and make a good circulation. But when I say that, of course, I cannot see the big smile and happy smile from the workers and employees over there. And so when I talk about the sustainability, I think as we talk about the animal and species, but I'm trying to how we can even the park, natural park, or whatever we call the preserved park, and how we can combine together with the village, incubating village. And incubating village is not necessary to be like Seoul or Pyongyang. Maybe small one, and we have a lot of idea like a digital environment. And even we can use the cyberspace. I think suddenly think about it because I did some of the research for the digital behavior. And I think it's maybe in the cyberspace we can create one incubator village, and we can pilot test, and even sustainable perspective we can examine. So I think that's my kind of, respond to your kind of question and comment about, yeah.
Okay, we'll do another round of questions starting over here.
Thank you. First, I'd like to compliment all of you in your personal commitments to trying to make a difference in creative ways. But I can't help but also want to ask about your and I know we're getting to the end of the program and we're between us and the cookies, so I want to make this short. But most all of you, I think, have spent time in North Korea over the last few years, and I was particularly struck by your comment, Dr. Hong. Everybody knows about minders and the Potemkin village aspect. And I just wanted a quick comment from any of you that would like to, of what have you seen change the most if you're spending time in North Korea? For example, with pole assistance area, we know who the gatekeepers are and who gets credit for most of the rice or things that probably should be the last thing, as Bill Brown said, to be sending. Is there any way to, in your experience, to get past your minders to be able to lay the seeds for things that are more people to people, not with the DMZ, not with sort of a many Doctors Without Frontiers, but getting something that will allow you to work directly with people in communities and not be minders? And what would you say about the general atmosphere?
I was wondering, you guys spoke about how the funds for the medical equipment could probably not be redirected since it would be pretty well monitored. But I was wondering if there was any way if we could perhaps monitor if or find out if the medical funds that North Korea would have already were planning to put in, if that would be perhaps redirected to something such as something dangerous, such as like missile programs or something, or like something similar.
Hi, my name is Emily Gibson, and I'm an intern at KEI. I have a question for Dr. Hong. Taking into consideration the lack of medical supplies and equipment in North Korea, and that you're also dealing with children, how do you properly triage in that situation? Do you have, typically if you're in another situation, you have either adults versus children, but like what do you really think about when you're making the final decision?
Dr. Allen, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I guess I can comment on maybe both those questions. So we actually have some opportunity to be working without the guides in direct presence. They're not maybe as glued to us as it may appear from the outside. Getting out to the countryside and trying to work directly with people more is something I would like to focus on in the future, but it is a bit of an obstacle, and so some room for improvement in those areas. I think that as far as medical care, I don't really think they perceive it too politically, and so I don't think they. Maybe I'm overstepping my boundaries, but I don't think they really are paying that much attention to us. And so we work in the spirit of well-being and betterment. And I'm also I'm not particularly scared of going, but I'm also a little bit scared of the acting out of what is perceived borders and such. And so they are I got in a small bit of trouble once, and so when they actually stated that their role is also to protect us, not just to protect them from us, because you don't really know what some of how people may react to some of the things that you're doing, because I don't it's hard to understand exactly the cultural expectations, and so there's a give and take, and as we work together more and more, I think we've been successful in establishing lines of trust in some areas, and so I think there's definitely some freedom to work in the medical space. But the second question, so triaging is a challenge, and so again, as we work more and more together, the things that we can do together have expanded, and so initially it was a little bit more restrictive, and I think it was probably reciprocated because there is just a lot of unknowns in what's happening, and because I consistently go and they know me better and better as we move forward, and I understand what the capabilities are of the hospital. I think there's just an ongoing development of trust, and so we face limitations in some of the things that we do, but some of those limitations are because American doctors are kind of spoiled, more or less, and so it's partially giving up your comfort zone to be able to work in that space, and so that is not something that probably a lot of people are interested in doing, but it's it gets fleshed out with every trip, and so we continue to advance.
So on the financing question, I mean, one of the ideas behind co-financing is that this is funding that wouldn't be used for other purposes, right? And the main concern is obviously the military programs that North Korea actually has. So the idea would be not for North Korea to contribute in kind, but actually, if possible, to contribute hard cash, so to speak, and this cannot be spent in the nuclear program or the missile program. So we don't focus as much on that on the paper, but that's a potential added advantage of pursuing this type of programs that North Korea would, as we mentioned in the presentation, would have to commit to this and wouldn't be using this funding for other purposes.
So I'd like to respond to the question about what changed most, and I'd like to just take two things I observed. One is, I've been going there since 2007. You know, there are only one flight a day into Pyongyang, right? Maybe two, but it's one flight. We go through Beijing. And all throughout the years, there were massive amounts of people. I mean, as much as a plane can hold, where Korean Americans were going back to North Korea to visit their family. These are U.S. citizens who was going there to visit. In 2017, as you know, the travel ban was instituted, and they went to zero. So there are no family visits that's happening. That's the biggest, I think, tragedy of the travel ban. These are people that are dying every day, and I think it is a humanitarian issue. So that's one change. It's dramatic. And the other one is that people always talk about how the regime has sort of prioritized the weapons, military development over social programs such as health. And I'd like to counter that argument, because over the last few years, North Korea has actually put more money into their health than in each year over the last 10 years. And specific examples that I saw was that they have actually developed their own ultrasound machines for domestic consumption. The other thing is they have actually developed and manufactured and now using artificial knee joints for their patients. And the last one is that they developed their own CT scanner. There's one prototype, and I saw the image quality. It's pretty good. So these are some of the examples I can give you that the government is committed, from my perspective, to taking care of the health of its people as best as they can.
Okay, about the questions about the changes in North Korea. I was in South Korea and meet with some people who just visited North Korea. And maybe we should check every month the changes happening in North Korea nowadays. Probably, it was 4 years ago, there's a lot of banners in North Korea, down with American imperialism, all the red and all these, things in the North Korean streets. And I haven't seen those banners recent years, and recently, even with the buildings, something bad about the Americans is erased. So that's something very interesting. And then recently, North Korea produced the stamps commemorating the June 12 Singapore summit in North Korea. They produced stamps. And another change is that in Wonsan, people, they know pricing of rice in Shiniju by telephone. That's very interesting. And also, they're very thirst of information from outside. Anybody coming into North Korea, they ask questions, many questions in private setting. And also they said 60% of farm products goes to the government. And now, what about the area in between the fields? That some areas, they kind of try to produce something out of their regular work hours. In the evening, in the night, they produce something, any spot, they can own the products. That's something different. And also, anybody who has in the government some kind of power of permitting something, like a building, condominium or hotel, they kind of dropping that, I'll give you some permit to building a hotel, will give me 20 apartments to me. So they try to, get a sense of how to make more money. So inside. So all in all, I think it is interesting that all these down with American imperialism is gone. And because North Korean leader cannot make a mistake in North Korea. So I think it's very interesting. Their policy cannot go back once it is set in, unlike United States.
I live in Universal North Texas, but I never been to North Korea.
before we conclude this panel and our programming for today, I just want to note that this panel really falls outside of the purview of what we normally talk about with North Korea, but it's actually given us a lot to think about in terms of the different myriad of ways in which we can think outside the box to advance and address challenges and advance diplomacy with North Korea. So I want to thank you all individually, and I hope everyone will join me in thanking our speakers for their presentations today. Thank you.